already fallen over once, so I need to be careful. Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to a slightly different presentation to Christoph, and I will be talking about consumers and trust. So we can have that discussion later. As part of the consumer behaviour track, then I'm here to present some findings of a research study that we carried out this year. So just briefly to introduce MEF, the organisation that I work for those of you who don't know us, we're the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. We're a global trade body, and our members are across the value chain, active in the mobile ecosystem, developing or enabling the digital economy. So from telcos and enterprises to vendors, app developers, platform providers, then we embrace diversity. So we have a dedicated working group, a consumer trust working group that we established in 2011, and there's over 40 companies actively participate in this working group, and they come together to share knowledge, look at the business models that are driving innovation, and we develop tools and guides to help our members. One of the key things that the group looks at each year is the study that I'll share the results of today. So it's 4 years old, and this year we studied 10 countries, 7 in Europe, and it's all done via mobile, and in total 6,500 consumers were surveyed by the group. So the working group develops the survey, and it's all around looking at the motivations and behaviours when it comes to privacy, security and identity. So we understand the limitations of asking these questions and the answers that we get, but the idea is that to raise awareness of these issues and provide insights as a springboard for discussion as well. So this year the study is focused on personal data handling and the attitudes, consumer attitudes towards that. So in general, businesses are preoccupied with compliance when it comes to personal data. This specific community goes way beyond that and looks at empowering individuals. The study is about asking, so this session said why do consumers care? I think the first question has to be, do consumers care? Do they understand the value of their own personal data? And as we progress in the study, is there a consumer demand for data-driven services? So I will crack on with some of the findings. So first of all, the good news for everybody in the room. The study found that when asked who do you trust most to manage your data, that 67% answered me, myself, want to manage their data. This among women was as high as 75%, men 63%. So globally, these are aggregate figures over the 10 countries. That means 33% didn't say myself. And does that mean they can't be bothered? Or does it perhaps mean that they recognise the effort that requires? Christoph said that consumers are lazy. Maybe they were the truthful respondents in the study. Leaving myself to one side, if you look at the types of organisations that consumers said they trust, then by a long way, then two key sectors stood out. So financial institutions, banks, credit card companies, etc., and then the health sector. So you would trust your doctor or hospital with your data. clearly there's a relationship with the kinds of data that these organisations hold, and I'll come on to that in a second. But I think for the different actors and stakeholders, most of whom are represented, I think, here, then there's a call to action or lessons to be learned. If you look at the government, for example, 27% of consumers say that they trust their government the most. If you look at the types of projects that have a civic purpose, so there was a session on smart cities earlier, then there's some way to go when it comes to building trust. At the other end of the scale, and probably not surprising, then the search engines and social networks are much less trusted, despite their very proactive engagement strategies when it comes to communicating just how they're protecting privacy. So if we look at the types of personal data, we wanted to understand whether consumers consider all data the same, and of course the answer is no. Location always gets lots of attention, but actually is found to be much less sensitive than, say, even basic contact information. Again, at the top is finance at 55%. Perhaps this implies concerns around security rather than privacy. Much lower down you have services such as health, education, IoT. But then ultimately these are nascent markets, and so the consumer won't necessarily understand the data that is being collected, and therefore doesn't rank it highly in a survey of this kind. As these services roll out, as new technology from AI, etc., will influence this ranking, and it'll be interesting to track what goes up and down the consumer's worry list. So every year we ask, are you comfortable sharing your personal data when using a mobile app or service? And this is clearly where there's some paradox comes in here, but I think the lessons that are learned are important. So in 2017, then those that responded that they're always happy to share dropped from 6%, already low, to just 3% year on year, and 39% are uncomfortable, claiming that no, they never do share data, of course, rather they don't know that they're sharing data. In last year's study, MEF identified a user type we called the reluctant sharer. So they were uncomfortable with sharing data, but they were aware that they needed to do so if they wanted to benefit from the kinds of services or use the free app, etc. Last year, this category was 40%. In 2017, we found this to have dropped by a fifth to 32%, but that's still a third of all respondents, and therefore we see it as a clear call to action for the need to build trust and to actively improve the data value exchange. So looking at a little bit more detail, some consumers are willing to share, but they're also looking to protect themselves, and so it's about a balance. On the previous slide, you saw that 10% of consumers were happy to share if they get something in return, and for the first time this year we asked about if it benefited other people, would you be willing to share, so for altruistic reasons. And there the respondents were 6%, and this rose to 10% among the users that use health and fitness apps. So again, that will be an interesting trend to track as data being used for societal good increases. So GDPR asserts that the users must be at the heart of the data collection process, and I'm guessing that the regulators will like this slide. because judging by our research, then the consumers agree. 42% of respondents said that they wanted the ability to request that all of their information is deleted. Similarly, 40% that they can withdraw permission that had been previously given at a time of their choosing. Transparency and control, also key. At 38%, it says they want to be clear what information is collected and what is being done with it, and also can decide whether that data is then shared with third parties. The right to be forgotten was a common theme that in the results of the study came up in quite a few of the different questions. When asked explicitly about how important it is that a company deletes personal data, if you ask them, then 61% said it was extremely important. This rises to 69% amongst women and 70% in the over 35s age group. But I think we need to see, is this actually an opportunity to build trust? When we looked at the data, so 84% of people who said that right to be forgotten was extremely important, they also said that it prevented them from doing anything else on their mobile. So another way of looking at that is that if consumers could easily have their data deleted, then actually this would build long-term engagement, a better trusted relationship with consumers. So we've collected some attitudes, but what about the behaviours of consumers? And again, this is their opinion as opposed to their actual behaviour. So are they willing to take action? According to the survey, then 75% always or sometimes read a privacy policy. This is higher in China at 82%, and the US at 79%, and actually lower in Europe. So France was at 65%, Belgium 62%. And again, the bad experience has an impact on this behaviour. So those consumers that had said they'd had a previous bad experience of people abusing their data, then they said that 84% of those consumers would go on to read, that would be reading policies. So it has a direct impact on behaviour. So they say they click or read a privacy policy, but are they actually willing to invest time? So we wanted to try to quantify what that could mean. Fears of friction that are well cited, are they actually unfounded? And again, is this a positive way of building a relationship? So we asked, how long are you willing to spend managing your data? 45% said as long as it takes, and 17% have tougher demands. They only want to spend 60 seconds, but only 8% said it's not worth any of my time at all. So if we take the average, where 1/3 said I'd spend up to 10 minutes, then this has to be news for those of you building privacy-enabling technologies. Clearly, implementation is key. And another question that was asked was around permissions. How would you, what's convenient to you when giving consent? And 37% said it should be done from within each individual app, but 26% said they would find a single app that alerts them whenever a company wants to collect their data would be interesting. And some of the other presenters will talk a bit more about the kinds of tools that this could address. So to understand the opportunities, then we need to consider the data value exchange. Our research demonstrates a demand for data-driven products, but the top of this particular question is that the highest value is the ability to have your data returned or deleted at the time of choosing. So higher than other incentives that you might expect, so financial rewards, discounts, etc. So companies have to be able to demonstrate this value, and that's a way of gaining competitive advantage. Consumers do want to be rewarded, but it's through control and choice. So a question on data portability. It's not an easy concept to ask consumers. However, we found that individuals can already picture how it might make their lives more convenient. So 33% said it would save time filling in forms, and 29% want to be able to access old data as they move from service to service. And this increased to 36% among fitness app users, which would make sense from a portability point of view. So again, positive news. So finally, looking at the types of services that could be possible. There's a board outside around use cases, and there's a session going on right now. And while all of this may be nascent in terms of mass adoption, then I think the trials that are taking place, be it real-world trials or in innovation labs, should be encouraged, that consumers can see the hypothetical benefits of the personal data economy. The top answer here is 43% would be interested in an app that could show me what personal data is being used and collected by all of my devices. So again, much higher focus on privacy versus the convenience of changing your address in one place, or having access to your medical records. There's also early signs of early demand for personalised services, such as insurance or healthcare. So this session asks whether MyData, whether the MyData paradigm can raise opportunities and solutions to bring non-digital natives into the digital world. And we would say yes, but it requires greater trust to manage this shift from the reluctant sharers that we talked about earlier towards a savvy consumer. So this year we identified a new use type, the savvy consumer. So somebody who guards their privacy and security fiercely. They're prepared to punish those that abuse their trust, but also reward businesses with loyalty for those that they find to be trustworthy. We also think that the savvy consumer has an innate understanding of data protection principles, as we've seen from some of the responses, and recognises the benefits of the personal data economy. And that's where you can download the full report. So in summary, why do consumers care and do they share? Yes, they do care, and if we get it right, then they will share. You can download the report for free, has lots more country-specific stats that I've not been able to go into here, and also looks at more details around the savvy consumer and the impact of trust on the mobile ecosystem. Thank you.